Edna is a lawyer by background, but has spent time similar to you in Johnson and Johnson, and now is in Edwards, looking after their investment and early stage investment in both biosciences as well as digital health. She comes to us from Israel. Edna, on to you.
A little bit about myself, just like Sam said, I've been in medical device and digital health for 15 years, some of it in Israel, some of it in the US. I'm now Director of Exploration at Edwards Life Sciences, which is focused on structural heart disease. Before that, I was the Chief Business Officer at an incubator looking at early stage companies, and I've worked at various startups. Some were acquired, some failed, or eventually failed, but we learned a lot along the way. And I began my career with Johnson & Johnson in the West Coast in the US. My MBA is from Kellogg, my undergrad is from the Hebrew University, but first and foremost, I'm a wife and mother to 3 wonderful kids. I love medical innovation, I love learning about new disease states, and I love meeting people. And that's probably the reason why I can't wait for the COVID-19 lockdown to finally end, and for me to be able to visit a few of the wonderful places in Israel and around the world. So hopefully that's coming soon. Before I speak about startups and all the exciting ecosystem that happens in Israel, I really have to give credit to the government, actually, that basically built the entire infrastructure to make this happen. Israel has a value-based healthcare system. We have 2 big HMOs and 2 smaller HMOs, and everything that happens within the HMOs, and people rarely change HMOs in their lifetime, is all about value-based healthcare. And there is a big motivation to have preventative care versus acute care. And therefore, technology basically serves that purpose. And I think the government of Israel realized that early on. And the framework that you see here is actually a framework that was built back in 2017. And it's really essential to understand this is what's driving part of the innovation, at least in Israel. At the base of everything, there is the organizational infrastructure and the technology foundation. Actually, I should go back. At the base of everything, there is the patient site. It's a patient-centered system. So you see the patient is in the center. And actually, I was quite positively surprised to see this. Everyone understands that what we're doing in Israel for the patient, in the HMOs, in the healthcare systems, is for the patient. And it's a patient-centric type of framework, so which is excellent, because at the end of the day, we're all here for the patient. But in terms of how we build it around the patient, there is an organizational infrastructure and the technology foundation, which are the base of everything. Technology being, the broadband, the 4G, 5G, whatever comes, the cloud technology, the cybersecurity to make sure that we keep privacy, but also the organizational infrastructure. And you mentioned it, it was mentioned in Dr. Devi's and my previous presenter, that it's really about the collaboration between the stakeholders in the system, be it the patient, the doctor, and the healthcare system as a whole, the provider, the payer. Everyone really needs to put themselves in the situation and be committed to adopting digital health solutions. I will say this one other value that is at the base of this framework, and it is repeated throughout the strategy many times, is equality. And that goes to Dr. Devi's words as well. Technology has the opportunity to give everyone care. We're talking about urban, we're everywhere in the country, you could give access to good healthcare to everyone. And again, that's part of the mission of this framework. The next, what you see on the sides, the system innovation and the policy supporting digital health are not only the commitment of everyone, all the stakeholders to continue this, but are also the supporting framework. And then the next layer is the light gray, which is the data layer. Which means that we have digital records, EMRs everywhere, and Israel has been digitizing its EMR since 1993. One of the HMOs started in 1993, the rest followed on. Before 2000, everyone was on EMR. And in 2010, they started a project that basically, it's EMR everywhere. So every time, every patient interaction, every doctor, be it in the community or at the hospital, is able to see the patient record from the past of that patient. And that saves lives, literally saves lives, because everyone, even though it's different organizations, everyone is connected and everyone can see the record. And And that was I would say that was probably forced by the government. I'm sure there was a lot of pushback from the different healthcare organizations, but that was a decision that was made and a budget that was given towards, and now that's the standard in Israel. Of course, it enables a lot of predictive medicine. If it enables real-time decision making because you have the information there, and really, and it also offers an opportunity for a continuum of care because some of the data is also aggregated at home. The next level is really what we call the axis of change. Those are the arrows that you see on the sides, be it on the patient trend or on the system trend. We believe in personalized medicine. The data is there to support the right treatment to the right person and promotion of health in terms of being proactive, diagnosing in time, predicting who needs to go to what treatment needs to be done, what diagnosis, and then making it sure that everyone has the same access, online access to healthcare, telemedicine, all of that, even before COVID was really going on in Israel. So this is kind of like the framework, and it really works, and it's just a part of the ecosystem here in Israel that builds digital health. I wanted to give a few examples of what happens when doctors have a problem and they decide to move forward and solve their own problems. All these startups, which are, some of them are, by the way, no longer startups, they are very much in commercial stage. All these were startups that were born by physicians. There's the colon score, which was kind of like invented or thought by a family physician that saw that the patients that she's treating do not go for their regular population screening for colorectal cancer. So she said, is there anything in the blood count that I can use to predict the risk for colorectal cancer? And it turns out it is, of course, using AI and machine learning and all of that. Now, through blood test results, there is a software that kind of like tracks patients and highly recommends to them to really do the test to be able to diagnose early and save lives. VizAI is a company that was born from an experience of another doctor who treated a patient for large vessel occlusion in stroke. But even though the treatment was successful, the patient unfortunately died because it took 4 hours before the treatment started. And what he did is create VizAI together with an Israeli technologist that basically not only prioritizes, of course, CTs looking at cases of stroke and making sure that everyone understands there's a stroke happening, but it's also a synchronized treatment platform. So the doctors that can intervene, or those doctors that maybe are now not at the hospital, are called on, and then they can take a look at all the information on their mobile phone. And by the time they make it to the hospital, they can just go straight in and go to do the intervention. So it's not just prioritizing and making sure that the system is alerted, but it's also bringing them together and making the intervention as quickly as possible. And then lastly, MediWare is an AI-enabled patient safety platform, again, born from a terrible mistake in drugs and medication. And because the inventor is a physician, I think he was very much aware that there is alert fatigue among healthcare staff. And he made sure that this one basically only highlights the outliers, the real true red alerts. And again, this is implemented in Israel's healthcare system, and I'm sure it already saved some lives. There's so much more to say about startups in Israel. There are so many other startups, more than 350 startups now in healthcare, IT, and telehealth. Israel has seen a lot of investment in 2019, 630 million investments in what we call digital health. And I have to say, it's the entire ecosystem coming to support this. A lot of it is the healthcare system. A lot of it is the doctors who are very open. A lot of pilots going on, but it's also the National Digital Health Program that I mentioned. It's the incubator program, which is grant money to support these startups at a very early stage and high risk. And there are the VCs that support it as well. So overall, I think we're heading in the right trajectory. Thank you.
Thanks, Edna. I think one of the things we know that Israel's a really forward-thinking country, and you guys have some great tech, but please bring some of that tech to places like India. I know you love your biggest world's market, which is the United States. But don't forget, we are actually the biggest market that actually will smile at you, right? And I think at the end of the day, if you are out for saving customer lives, we can actually implement it. So please bring the best of Israeli tech to healthcare institutions in India. I think the same thing with Yusuf. Yusuf, please promote more Indian companies or companies from India to come through your program and then come back here and implement it, because I think you'll actually see outcomes. And at the end of the day, it's the outcomes that makes us smile that much more. So in Israel, I come back to the original question: who is the beneficiary of the data so far? Is it the government? Is it the consumer? Or is it the provider out there? Or is it somebody else? And linked to that is, do you have a data exchange and interoperability for EMR, or you follow the US standards? I guess that's question one to Edna. Quickly, if you could give a point of view.
So on the interoperability, everything's interoperable. Like all the healthcare system are connected. And again, that's a push by the government. I heard that back in the days when they implemented that, there was a lot of pushback from the healthcare organizations and from the doctors, but eventually, somebody made the decision and forced it upon everyone. And I think it's all for the patient's benefit. As for who holds the data and who benefits from that, that's a different story. I think we're all struggling a little bit of how do we, it's obviously something that has a lot of monetary impact. Like the healthcare organizations right now, the HMOs are the owners of the data, and they are the ones that would contract any startup for that information. So they would benefit. But I think all of them have this policy of, we're not just giving you the data so that you can do your own startup. We want to see how this would be beneficial to the population that we cover. So there has to be an altruistic reason behind it, but that is where the money comes from. So it's the relationship between the HMOs and the startup system. Now, patients would benefit eventually if there is a solution that would help them, say cost saving lives, all of the things that you can enjoy from technology, but not immediately.
Thank you.